Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hasbro Marvel Legends figure unboxing and review video. Now today we will be taking a look at the entire wave of What If figures. Now I personally have mixed feelings about the show, but these figures from the very get-go are ones that I knew I needed to add to the collection because the art style is so very unique and the characters themselves are also super unique. Now there's one more that unfortunately hasn't been released yet at the time of filming this video, and that's of course the Hydra Stomper. As soon as he is out, I will grab him and review him on the channel for you. Now if you are looking to pick up this wave of legends, they are available from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is of course down in the description below. They have 12-month installment plans and an awesome reward system. What we are going to do now is get the box for Captain Carter laying flat in the light box and kickstart the unboxings. Here of course we have the box art for Captain Carter. It's done in the usual Marvel Legends style. This time we have a big honkin' what if on the front as well as her name, plus a massive open window showcasing Captain Carter herself as well as the arms for the Watcher. Because of course there is a Build-A-Figure for the wave and it's none other than the Watcher himself. We do have a stunning image of Captain Carter that looks like it's been ripped right out of the show, plus a little read-up in various languages. Now, I personally am really excited to get the Hydra Stomper so I can pose him up right alongside Captain Carter here. They're going to make a fantastic pair. Honestly, I wish he was out at the same time as this figure. It would have been great to showcase him in this video, but nevertheless, here we have Captain Carter. First in-hand impressions are very positive. I'm loving the vibrant, punchy colors. But just like all of our other wave unboxing and review videos, we will be unboxing all of the figures one by one, then carrying on from there. So without further ado, let's move on. Next up, we have a figure, yes, from Disney+, but technically not from What If. This, of course, is one of the Loki variants, aka Sylvie from the Loki show. I do own the TVA Loki from the Disney Plus wave, so this will be a great addition to that shelf. On the side, we have an image of Sylvie, and of course that same image blown up on the back, plus a little bit of a read-up on the side there. Now, I wasn't sure that they were going to make a ton of figures from the Loki show, but luckily they decided to not only make Loki himself, but also Sylvie and Mobius. So I am currently trying to hunt down Mobius, so if I do manage to get him down here in Australia, or indeed from Toys Wonderland, you will see a review on the channel. But here we have Sylvie herself, a very interesting design to a relatively traditional Loki costume, but we'll touch more on that in just a second. We do have more figures to unbox though, so let's move on to Doctor Strange Supreme. Now I didn't actually know that's what they were calling him, but there it is printed on the front of the box. Of course, that same massive What If logo and Doctor Strange himself. On the back, we do have an image of him and a little bit of a read-up, just like all of the other figures. Now, so far, this has been my favorite episode in What If. I liked the darker, more serious tone. There were proper consequences to his actions. It wasn't all just fun and games, like some of the other episodes. I know some people really did enjoy those other What If episodes, but to me, this one right here was where it's at, so I'm super glad to have this figure. Now I know there is a little bit of reuse. The Fwoosh did his review and he showcased the reuse on Doctor Strange, but nevertheless, I'm really impressed so far with the way he looks. We do have, once again, a few more figures to unbox, so moving on to Zombie Hunter Spidey. This one I was really excited about. It's of course the Disney Parks Spidey suit with the Doctor Strange cape. And unlike the Hot Toys figure, this one actually comes with an unmasked head sculpt. We've got an awesome shot of him on the back of the box, and of course he does come with another part to complete the Watcher. Don't worry, we will be building the Watcher so you can take a look at him a little bit later in the video. Now, this is actually my first Spidey figure from Marvel Legends, at least based on the MCU design, so it's all new to me. And so far, I'm liking the way he looks and feels in hand. Once again, those super punchy, vibrant colors do definitely stand out. There is one other figure that goes along with this Spidey, so let's bring him out here. And he is, of course, Zombie Captain America. I am super excited to get this one out here. It's an incredibly unique design for Cap. Obviously, it's a zombie. I'm already loving the way he looks. We do have an awesome image of him right up there on the back of the box, and he looks all kinds of nasty. I am hoping for a second wave of these figures, and hopefully a Mark 50 zombie as well. A Thanos would also be a nice addition, but let me know what you think of the zombie versions of these characters and which ones you'd like to see in figure format. Yeah, out of the box, this guy is incredible. I'm super happy with the way he looks. Now, there are two more figures to take a look at, and they are also pairs, just like Zombie Cap and Zombie Hunter Spidey. So, the first of which is T'Challa as Star-Lord. Of course, we unfortunately lost the amazing performer, an equally amazing human in the form of Chadwick Boseman. He passed away, but this was one of his final performances, and I think he did an amazing job. This is a very unique design of figure. The proportions, the colors, and of course the fact that it is Black Panther, who is now technically Star-Lord, is a very good what-if style premise, so I'm glad they made him in figure format. We do have a stunning image of him wearing the helmet on the back of the box here. Now, as I said, these will be in pairs. We do have T'Challa, and we also have Nebula from the same episode. I am hoping that we will potentially get a Yondu, but only time will tell. That was one of the most difficult to get out of the box, but here we have him. And yeah, my assumptions were correct. It is an extremely unique design for a figure. But we do have one final figure to unbox, and it is, of course, Nebula from the very same episode. This design is another super unique one. I mean, it's almost so anti-Nebula that you wouldn't even recognize her. But we'll touch on that when we get the figure out of the box. We do have another stunning image of her ripped right out of the animation. And as I said, I am hoping for more characters from the various episodes. Whether or not they do go ahead and make more waves, I guess will depend on how successful this one is. There have been a few costume changes teased for upcoming episodes, and I know I personally would love to get that Ultron. If you've seen the episode, you know what I'm talking about. Here we have Nebula though. I'm once again in love with the vibrant colors. This wave, at the very least, is going to stand out on the shelf. What we are going to do now, though, is get all of the accessories that come with the various figures laid out in the lightbox and take a closer look at everything they come with. And here we have all of the parts and pieces that come with the entire wave. Now granted, they also come with the Build-A-Figure parts, so we'll take a look at those in the very next clip. Now starting off with Zombie Hunter Spidey first, he comes with Doctor Strange's Cloak of Levitation. If you're wondering why and you haven't seen the episode, do yourself a favor, sit down and watch this particular episode. I actually kind of enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite, but it was definitely up there. I love the texture down this one strip, and of course the gold paint around the front for the clasp kind of sections. I also love how the collar is nicely flared up. You will of course see this on Spidey himself. Now he does also come with a masked head sculpt because he also comes with a Peter Parker one, which you saw just a second ago. I like the big wide open lenses. Unfortunately, mine does have a little scuff on the right one, but other than that, it's fairly crisp and clean. Now, normally I would complain about the unpainted web lines, but seeing as this is from animation, I personally am going to give it a pass. He also, of course, comes with two closed fists. Now, moving on to Nebula, she comes with this very interestingly shaped blaster. It's kind of a very short, stubby weapon, but I like the way it looks. Also, the trigger area is very flush and streamlined, so we'll have to see how hard or easy that is to get into her hands when we bring the figure herself out here. Speaking of hands, you have a gun-holding hand and also a closed fist. Next up, for Star-Lord, or I should say T'Challa, he comes with the classic Star-Lord blasters, this time done in a gorgeous metallic purple and gold. These things look better than they ever have in this color scheme. I just love the way they look, and of course you will see him holding them. He also comes with a masked Star-Lord head sculpt. I love the use of the matte plastic that's just the flat colors, and also the metallic gold. It's a really awesome juxtaposition, and it works very nicely for the animated look. You can also see a ton of texture sculpted into his hair there. For Zombie Cap, it's relatively straightforward. Of course, he does come with Cap's shield. This one is bloodied up. You can see a little bit of a purple mist over the top that's, I think, meant to replicate blood, but of course, these are kids' toys. They're sold in the toy aisle. You can't really go for a punchy, glossy, vibrant red blood look, so they've gone with purple, and for me, that just works. You do have some silver and blue metallic paint, and also the straps on the back. I'm super glad they didn't go with that annoying little clip mechanism. That means you can't have this on his back, but let's be honest, he's always going to be holding this. Now, we do get another Cap-style shield in the form of a slightly smaller one for Captain Carter. Comparing it to the Cap one, as you can see, it's kind of the size of the inner circles of this one. I like the smaller size. I also like the not so metallic paint job. It's more of this flat but very, very vibrant Union Jack with the red and blue, and it also has the straps on the inside. They've done away with that annoying clip. Next up for Sylvie, she of course comes with two open palm hands that are meant to be used with her weapon. This is stunning. I'm a huge fan of what they've done with the blade. It's got this metallic translucent effect, some gorgeous metallic gold and green down the bottom, plus a little head of some kind of creature for the hilt. Do let me know if you know what that is down in the comments below. Lastly, with Doctor Strange Supreme, he does come with his more evil version of the cloak. It's done in a matte black. Unfortunately, some of the gold paint has made its way up here, but I do like the way it's sculpted. It's flowing and very ominous. On the inside, we have a glossy purple with some gold circles. This thing is definitely painted to the nines, and I really like the way it looks. It also, of course, has a peg on the back, so you can peg it into Doctor Strange himself. The only other piece he comes with is his magical mandala type effect. It is rather chonky, but that I think is being done so it doesn't break when you are trying to handle it. I really do like this effect. It's translucent, it's already attached to the hand, it definitely gets the job done. The only complaint I have is that we didn't get more of these. What we are going to do now though is get the Build-A-Figure parts for the Watcher out here and take a closer look. Now you may be sitting there thinking, Justin, isn't it counterintuitive to take a look at these parts separately when we're just going to build him and look at them again anyway? Yes, you're absolutely right, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to take a look at the parts that will otherwise be hidden when he's fully built, such as these legs. They get tucked under these really hard plasticky robes, so you'll never, A, get to see them again, and also you'll never get to take advantage of the articulation, because this is kind of a traffic cone style design. You do have pinless knees, and they do have a significant double bend, but once again, you'll never be able to take advantage of that. You do have swivel forward and back for the foot and pivot side to side. The skin tone is also done in that cartoony style orange, which works perfectly for the Watcher. The cape is also something that will kind of be hidden, specifically the inside part. It has a ton of awesome sculpted in texture, and it has been shaded. This marks one of the only pieces for this Build-A-Figure that has any paint on it, and it's on the inside of the cape, something that pretty much is going to be entirely hidden by his body anyway. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the fact that they went to town on the detailing and the paint applications on the cape itself, but on the inside it's something that you won't really get to see as much. Now I'm pretty sure you'll want to see him built as much as I do, so Here we have him, fully assembled. Now, I personally wasn't prepared for a figure as big as this guy is in hand. I'm super impressed with the sheer amount of plastic that's gone into the Watcher here. This guy is sizable, to say the least. Now, in terms of the sculpt, it's relatively simple. It's based on the animation, of course. We do have a little bit more of that shading that we saw on the inside of the cape, on the outer robes. It is flowing off to one side, and as I said just a second ago, the knees and pretty much the entire lower torso are completely hidden and null and void. You can't really use any of the articulation that we previously saw. It's all tucked up under there. I do love the metallic gold paint to this front insignia style piece. It also has some nice scratch marks over the top just to bring out some added detail. Now they've kind of mimicked that same design for his bracer here, except this time it's sculpted in rather than painted, and the entire thing is cast in gold plastic. They've done a pretty darn decent job of matching this gold to this upper chest section. It looks pretty much on par. Also, the asymmetrical design is just something that's interesting to look at on the shelf. It just works. Then, of course, we have his big honkin' noggin. This looks exactly like it did in the show. They've also done the digital face printing tech on the eyes and the mouth. Not that they really had to, because it's literally just white eyes, but it adds some extra detail around the eye sockets themselves, and also some shading all the way up to his forehead here. They didn't need to print any of that at all, but it adds some extra definition, which I think helps on what would otherwise be a relatively bland looking head sculpt. Now, he does have this piece on the back that you have to peg in. Unfortunately, mine has a habit of not really wanting to stay in there, so I've opted to have the cape sit on top of it, and then it kind of just pushes it into place. Now, I know it's not standard form in these Marvel Legends videos to take a look at the Build-A-Figure first, but I couldn't help myself. I was too excited to take a look at the Watcher. What we are going to do now, though, is start looking at the rest of the wave. Now, just like I've done in previous full wave videos, we will be taking a look at all of the figures in rapid succession on the turntable, and then we'll take our time and look at the details up close and personal. Either way, starting off with Doctor Strange Supreme, the evil version of the character. I love the way this guy looks. He's not 100% perfect, and we'll touch on that when we take him off the rotating turntable, but the cape kind of is letting this guy down. Other than that though, the sculpt, the color scheme, and the overall proportions look bang on. Then we have Captain Carter. This one I was looking forward to potentially more than some of the others. Granted, when Hydra Stomper comes out, he will complement her perfectly, but once again, the proportions just work. And the vibrant colors plus that amazing head sculpt set this one over the top. Then we have Nebula. I wasn't entirely sure about this figure, I didn't know what to expect here, but I'm pleased to report from a technical perspective on the shelf, she will stand out. The design is unique, to say the least. There is some sculpted in texture and detail on the outfit, and the hair is very, very vibrant. So too is her skin, so she will stand out when you look at her on the shelf. Next up, from that same episode, we have T'Challa as Star-Lord. I was really excited about this figure. He comes with 2 head sculpts plus the weapons, more than you're ever going to need. Plus, the proportions are very, very unique. He's tall and lanky. It looks exactly like he did in the animation. I'm only hoping that we get some more characters from that particular episode. Then we have Sylvie. This one, if someone told me, hey, Marvel Legends are doing a what if wave, she wouldn't have been on the list. I wouldn't have thought that she would have been included in this set, but I'm glad she is. We needed a Sylvie. This is still a Disney Plus wave, so it just works. I love the design of the character from the show, and while it's not 110% perfect, it's still captured very well. Then we have Zombie Captain America, the figure that I didn't think would ever be made by Hasbro, and I'll touch on that in just a second because there are some specific reasons as to why, but its sculpt is incredible. It's very unique. It stands alone on the shelf in terms of the goriest, bloodiest, grossest Marvel Legends figure to date, and I'm all for that. At the end of the day, it's a zombie. There should be chunks of flesh ripped away and bones exposed, and he should have blood splattered everywhere, and they've done exactly that. Then we have Zombie Hunter Spidey, who of course complements Cap Zombie really well. I love the way he looks. He's got a very vibrant outfit, but he does have some dirt and grime on there as well. He's not all crisp and clean and brand new. Now this figure could potentially be reused, and we'll touch on that in just a second, but I'm glad that we got both head sculpts. They could have very easily just given us the masked or the unmasked and called it a day. I'm looking at you, Hot Toys. But no, they didn't. We got both, which is absolutely the way it should be, and they also gave us the cloak. The only thing that's missing is an Ant-Man head in a jar. What we are going to do now, though, is take him off the rotating turntable, punch in, and take a closer look at the details. Here we have him up close and personal. Now I know it's still relatively early on in the video, but I am tempted to say that this guy is potentially one of my favorites in the wave. There's something about the really vibrant blue and red, the overall classic look to the Spidey suit, but also something very different with the Cloak of Levitation. Plus, you do get two head sculpts. We will do a snap transition and change out the head sculpt in just a second. I also love the sculpt of the cloak. It very nicely hugs the shoulders, the collar is nice and popped, showing a little bit of attitude, and it flares off to one side. Plus, we already discussed the texture and sculpt of it earlier. I also told you that this is the Disney Parks suit. For those sitting there wondering, what on earth are you talking about, Justin? This is the suit that the actor/performer wears at Avengers Campus at Disneyland. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this suit, in fact this very same figure, just without some of the battle damage or wear and tear that this one has, packaged as a Disney Parks exclusive. It would be a genius move by Hasbro, and I'm fairly certain that's what they're going to do. Now, starting off with the Peter Parker head sculpt, I love the way this looks. It looks exactly like the animation. I wouldn't be saying that it looks like Tom Holland per se, but it does look like how he looked in the episode. I like the style and sculpt of the hair. It kind of gives me Spider-Man animated series vibes with these sort of wispy bits that come up the top there. And the digital face printing also looks fantastic. Hasbro has been getting better and better with their digital face printing tech. This is one of the best examples. And it's not even on a real person. This is an animated figure. They didn't even really need to do it here, but I'm glad they did. As for the suit itself, there is a ton of sculpted in texture. The best example that I can see of it is down here on the thighs. As you can see, this sort of material-like pattern has been etched into the surface, and yeah, I'm really happy with how that looks. He also has a little bit of dirt and grime just dotted around the suit. It's not enough to throw off the entire look of the suit itself. In fact, I think it adds to it, specifically because this Spidey was of course hunting zombies. I also like the stylized look to the spider logo on the front and back, and the big honkin' web shooters. These are supposed to be a chrome silver. I potentially will touch them up myself, but at the very least they are an accurate sculpt and shape. Now he does have the web cartridges on the belt, but with the way they've done the articulation, when you swivel the waist, half of the cartridge is up on top and off to one side, and the bottom is on the other, so that kind of doesn't work for me. I would have liked those pieces to be rubbery overlays that sit up slightly higher, but nevertheless, at least they are sculpted and painted. Now, as for the second sculpt, Here we have it! Now this complements the body perfectly. Obviously, it's very classic Spidey. They haven't even gone ahead and done those multi-plated pieces for the lenses. They're just very simple, black and white. They get the job done perfectly, as I said earlier in the accessory segment. The only thing that I kind of don't really love about the way this Spidey looks when he doesn't have the cape on is the way that his neck is slightly hunched forward. Now I know they've done that to accommodate the cape because when it's on it looks perfect, but for those of us out there who potentially don't want to go with the cape, it just looks a little bit weird with him continually hunching forward. Overall though, this figure is a very strong entry in the wave. Sticking with the zombie theme, here we have Zombie Cap. I personally have no idea how this was approved to be sold in the kids' toy aisle, cause it's just gruesome. There's no other word that I can use to describe it. It literally has holes that go all the way through. You can see bones and tendons and blood and gore. And I'm all for it. It works awesomely for this zombie cap. You do have some ribs visible up the top and on the back, and he does have blood splattered on his arms and also on his hands, plus a little bit on his outfit. Now I do have him holding his shield, but as you can see it's not the best grip in the world because he only comes packaged with these open palm gripping hands. It works really awesomely for a zombie figure. Of course he's running trying to catch people and eat them, but it doesn't work perfectly for holding his shield. I would have loved some swap out hands so that you could actually have him grip onto it perfectly, but I understand. Most of the sculpting budget went into the figure himself, which is exactly how I'd have it. This is incredibly unique. Now, starting off with the head sculpt first, it looks exactly like the episode. It's probably not the first or the last time that I'll say that in this video, because they have nailed all of the sculpts for pretty much every single figure here. He does have that really nasty looking face with the dislocated jaw and the holes in his cheeks, and this sort of greenish blue colored flesh. It's decaying, it looks gruesome, and I love it. He also has his chin strap just dangling off to the side. I also like the metal parts because they're not metallic. They're done in this really dirty, rusty looking color. That's also on the top here of his helmet, on the star, and on the belt buckle, plus the harness, which, by the way, is a separate floating piece, so it should get out of the way of articulation. I also like these sections that are sculpted to be little tatters of his outfit. They do a nice job of coming over the articulation points and not really hindering it. That can also be said for down here with the forearm. There are some little pieces that hang over the top, and some chunks of flesh that have, of course, been taken out, as you'd expect. He also has a glove on one side that's been completely torn to shreds, and just a bare arm entirely on the other side, and the same thing can be said for the hand. Then, of course, coming down to the legs, those holes that I mentioned previously are awesome. I'm super surprised that they managed to get this done. I thought that they would have just done it as a solid piece and painted black or red in there, but they didn't. They did actual holes while still retaining the full range of motion with double jointed knees. Coming down to his feet, there is an asymmetrical design here, but this I don't necessarily love. I mean, I totally get the logic here. This side is slightly longer because he is wearing a big chunky boot, but when it comes to actual practical articulation and getting him to stand, kind of just doesn't work. I understand why they did it, but I would have preferred this leg be ever so slightly longer just so he could stand on a flat surface. Overall though, yeah, this is another great figure in the wave. Moving on to Sylvie, the only Loki figure in the wave, which works perfectly fine for me. This is a what-if wave anyway, so she kind of feels out of place just a little bit. I guess because she is a variant, it makes sense, but now that we have TVA Loki, Mobius, and Sylvie, that's enough for me. That's the complete set from the series until we get Season 2. Now, I do have her wearing her hard candy shell style robe. It does have a fairly unique sculpt to it, how it billows out around her arms, so you can get slightly more range, but it's still very, very restrictive. We do have the hood sculpted out the back, and it's painted in a glossy green on the inside. Now, I personally will be opting to remove it and display her without it, just because you do get more range. Yes, her neck does look slightly long and she looks slightly lanky without it, but trust me, that's something you can very easily pose away. Now let's talk about the head sculpt. Is it 110% perfect? No, I don't think it is. It's a mass market, relatively inexpensive product at a very small scale. I think they've done a very serviceable job. I like the digital face printing tech on the eyes and the mouth, and it looks decently enough like her. I can tell who it's supposed to be. She also has the crown with the broken horn on one side and a rubbery one on the other, so don't worry, you won't be losing the horn on the other side. She also has a ton of sculpt in her hair and also a wash in the crevices just to bring out the detail. She also has a very unique sculpt to the outfit. I love the way it looks. She's got some gold sections and also a very dark green, almost like a charcoal green. I'm also a massive fan of the way that looks. It's almost blending in with the blacker sections, but it's very stealth. This version of Loki was sneaking around up to no good, so it makes sense that she doesn't want to wear a very flamboyant gold and green outfit. This works perfectly for the character. I also love that there is some detail sculpted in the back with these little strings coming down. That is a nice attention to detail. She also has pinless joints both for the arms and also down here for the legs. So it is a relatively modern design for Sylvie. Now she does have a baggier look to the pants and it's asymmetrical. They haven't just gone ahead and flipped the sculpt and used it on the other side. Lastly, coming down to the boots, they do look very Earth-like to me, but who knows, maybe this is something that she's scavenged over the years as she's developed this look. Overall, so far, yeah, I've been really impressed with the figures in the wave, including Sylvie. Moving on to Nebula. This one was the biggest departure in my opinion to her original look. I mean, she literally didn't have hair in the films, but in What If she does. I like the way this looks as a figure, but I don't necessarily see a ton of Nebula here. I mean, yes, it is obviously supposed to be her, and she has those very Nebula black eyes, but all of that tech detail on the arms and on the face, it's just not there, and those are kind of very quintessential aspects of the character. So for me, I'm super happy with the way the figure turned out, but in terms of a character design for Nebula, who we all know at this point, it just kind of missed the mark. But if you like it, that is totally fine. That's all that matters. Now, starting off with the sculpt to the hair, I love the way it looks. It kind of flicks up towards the edges and comes down over her face. Now, Robo from the Fwoosh did try to move the hair, but unfortunately his was overly stiff. But for mine, you can see, yes, there is another eye fully sculpted and painted underneath this hair that comes down the front. Now, you'd think that it limits articulation, but she still gets a fairly decent range, which you'll see in the articulation segment. Now, coming down to the outfit, it's pretty much entirely done in purple, but not just one color. There's a darker color up top, and then the rest of it is done in unpainted purple, but that's fine. It has this very matte, cartoony style look to it. This piece, on the other hand, is kind of starting to bother me. No matter what I do, it's floating around and moving all around the place. I am tempted just to put a drop of glue and fix it in place so it doesn't zoom around as much. I do have her gun in the holster, and something I didn't mention in the accessory segment is it's done in the exact same brown color plastic as the belt. That's a bit weird. I think this should have been done in a black or gunmetal plastic just to differentiate it from the holster/belt style harness piece. The arms themselves are a very vibrant blue which match perfectly to the face, and they are pinless, which makes sense because they are just bare human arms. You don't want some unsightly pins there. Unfortunately, because they did reuse the body from a previous Nebula, you do have pins, but the upper part is purple, same on the inside, and then the boots are brown on both sides, so it kind of negates the issue there. It works just fine. They are nice and slim, and they come down to a very thin point down here at the ankle. She is a little bit tough to stand, but just take your time with it and you can get it done. I also love that on the surface there is a ton of texture sculpted in, of course because this is a reused figure mold from an MCU figure. Then coming down to the boots, there is a ton going on here with straps and buckles and various bits and pieces. Overall, for Nebula, as I said, it's not a super classic look for the character herself, but in terms of a figure, this one will definitely stand out on the shelf. And sticking with the same episode, here we have T'Challa as Star-Lord. Now this to me was one of the more interesting what-if scenarios, and I think it played out relatively well, but in figure format, that's where this design shines, or literally doesn't. The entire thing is covered in a matte coat, and that makes this guy look like $1,000,000. They definitely did T'Challa as Star-Lord justice in figure format. Now, starting off with the head sculpt first, can I say that this looks overly like Chadwick Boseman? No, not really, but I don't necessarily need it to. It looks exactly like he did in the animation, and that didn't really look like Chadwick either. I mean, there are suggestions of it, but it does the job perfectly. I love the digital face printing for the eyes and the mouth, and then the sculpted in texture on the hair sets the entire thing off a treat, including the sculpted and painted beard. This head sculpt is phenomenal, but you will see the helmeted one in just a second. Now moving down to the jacket, it's the only thing on him that's a very vibrant color. The rest of it is either grey or brown, so it sets the jacket off a treat. I love the metallic gold, the punchy, vibrant look to the purple, and that works its way down to the blasters as well, which I know you've already seen, but it's worth seeing how they look in his hands and alongside the jacket. The metallic purple contrasts just a little bit with the matte color, but it's still in the same purple family, so it does work. You also have the metallic gold, which ties into the rest of the outfit. He also has a little bit dotted around on his pants. You also have these brown boots. Now, I'm not exactly sure what these pieces are supposed to be, if maybe they're supposed to be the suggestion of his rockets, or if they're supposed to be pegs to peg something into. I thought initially the blasters could have been pegged down there, but unfortunately they can't, and he doesn't have any holsters up the top, so I'm not exactly sure what they're there for. If you know though, let me know down below. He does have a very interesting and stylized look to the boots, which come down to very flat and wide feet, so luckily this guy stands a treat. But I'm pretty sure you'll want to see the helmeted head sculpt, so here we have it. Now, I thought this guy looked badass before, but he looks even better now. Also, the helmet does a fairly decent job of covering up the neck, so it does look relatively seamless. It sits up still a little high just due to the popped collar, but it still works awesomely. I love the purple in the eye lenses and the gold on the faceplate. It ties the entire look together. I was tempted to go with the unhelmeted head sculpt in the display, but I think for me personally, I'm going to have to display him like this. Moving on to Captain Carter, another one of my favorites from the wave. As soon as we saw her in that episode, it was an instant classic, and I'm pretty sure everyone will agree with me there. I'm hoping that one day we get to see Hayley Atwell wearing this suit in live action. Now let's talk about the shield. Unfortunately, she does just have the one open palm grip hand, which doesn't do an amazing job of holding the shield. If you kind of just wedge the strap underneath that thumb and tilt the hand off to one side, it holds it a little bit better, but it's still slightly loosey-goosey. Also, it's being held on the wrong side. She's not left-handed. Even on the front of the box, we have her holding the shield on this side, but that simply can't be done because she doesn't have the requisite gripping hand. It's just a closed fist. So technically, these hands should have been swapped. Now let's talk about the head sculpt. It's perfect. I have no complaints. I love the sculpt to the hair all the way around, and the expression works. It's simple yet effective. I can see the likeness to the character from the animation and also to Hayley Atwell. The digital face printing tech is crisp and clean as always. Then we move down to the outfit, which is also relatively crisp and clean, and there's a ton of paint here. She has brown up here for the straps, the white and red for the Union Jack, a little bit more red on the arms, and a ton more on the forearms, plus even some silver for the buckle on the back. That's totally something that I would have seen them skipping painting altogether, but I'm glad they didn't. She also has some silver on the belt buckle, then coming down to the legs, even more red. That does a great job of breaking up the overall bland look of the matte blue. I'm glad that they've added that pop of color. Then lastly, coming down to the boots, that brown, which ties in very nicely with the flared look to the gloves, and she does have a slight flare to the boots, so when you articulate the feet forward and back, there's a little bit of a gap there, so you can get slightly more range. Now I am hoping we get a 2.0 of sorts, and it's the strike suit from that upcoming episode, but only time will tell. For now, yeah, I'm super happy with this Peggy, and I cannot wait to get the Hydra Stomper to pose her with him. Lastly, here we have Doctor Strange Supreme, the evil slash not really evil version of Doctor Strange who was doing everything in his power to save Christine. But if you've seen the episode, you know what happens. If you haven't, this episode is definitely one that you ought to check out. Now in figure format, some stuff works here and some doesn't. The one thing that you can very clearly see that doesn't is this annoying cape. It billows up and it's kind of weirdly sculpted so it doesn't sit perfectly on the body. I am tempted to put a dab of glue just up the top so it sits down the way it should, because as it stands it kind of has a mind of its own and likes to go wherever it wants to. That peg in the back does a terrible job of holding it in place, so let's ditch it altogether, at least for now. Now let's talk about the head sculpt. This looks sensational. It's without a doubt, for me, the best in the wave, right up there alongside Peggy Carter as Cap. I love the sunken in look to the cheeks and the overall dark, evil nature to the printed in eyes. Plus, I can still very clearly tell that's supposed to be Benedict Cumberbatch. I don't know what they've done to make that happen, but whatever it is, keep doing it, Hasbro. This looks awesome. And then for the outfit, it is slightly reused from his MCU version from the waist down, but up the top here, it's all new. He's got this insignia with this dark purple against this equally dark reddish purple, and then blue for the rest of the suit, which is classic Doctor Strange. I've also taken the liberty of attaching his magical effect. This works perfectly. I will absolutely be having mine displayed with this effect. It's something that I hope they do more going forward. Pre-attaching it to the hand is the best way to go, and it looks exactly like it should. I also like the sculpted gold pieces. They are suitably metallic. Now, one thing that I don't necessarily love is this piece, and I don't exactly know how they could have done it other than making it out of fabric, because it's super restrictive for the legs. You can't really get a ton of range going forward, and you'll see that in a second when we look at the articulation. It comes down around the front, there is a lot of sculpted in texture, and it looks great when he's just standing there, but you can't pull off a ton of poses because it is really restrictive. We do have some orange paint that comes around the top, but I'm pretty sure some of these other pieces should be painted as well. Lastly, coming down to the legs and boots, a ton of sculpted in wrinkles, and the boots I'm pretty sure are also reused from a movie Doctor Strange, but that's perfectly fine, they work for this figure. Overall, this figure might just be another one of my favorites in the wave, at the very least in my top 3. But what we are going to do now that we've looked at each individual figure is check out the articulation. Just going over articulation on Captain Carter. Now bear in mind this is my personal copy of the figure, and of course the same goes for the rest of the wave, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful. I'm sure when you get yours in hand, you can push the joints slightly further than I'm willing to go. Now starting off with the head sculpt, it is on a ball joint and the neck is on a joint as well, so you do get forward and back, swivel and pivot side to side. The arms will go up the full way, they will of course go forward and back. We do have a swivel at the bicep, a pinless double bend at the elbow, and of course a swivel forward and back at the wrist, plus a little bit of side to side. We do have a ball joint at the upper part of the torso, and unfortunately nothing down below. The legs themselves will go forward to about there, they will go out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, a double bend at the knee which goes all the way up, a swivel forward and back for the feet, and also a little bit of tilt side to side. Next up for Sylvie, I have taken the liberty of removing her cape, although if she is wearing it, she still will have all the same range, except you won't be able to use the joints because it's a solid plastic hunk. As for the head sculpt, we have a ball joint at the base of the head, allowing for forward and back, swivel and pivot side to side. The arms will go up to about there. They will of course go forward and back on ratchets, a single bend at the elbow that also incorporates a swivel, and a hinge forward and back at the wrist, plus swivel side to side. We do have a ball joint at the upper part of the torso, which gets you a fairly significant crunch forward and back. You also have swivel and pivot side to side. The legs will go forward on ratchets to about there, out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, a double bend at the knee, which gets you way past 90, plus a swivel down here at the boot, hinge forward and back, and of course some ankle pivot. Moving on to Nebula, her articulation scheme is very similar to Sylvie. Now starting off with the head sculpt, because she has the longer locks, it does tend to collide with the body, so you don't get a ton of range forward, but you do get swivel and pivot side to side. The arms go up to there, forward and back, of course, a single bend at the elbow, but it only gets you to 90. That also incorporates a swivel, the same exact hinge and swivel style joint for the wrist. We do have that ball joint up at the top area, but we also have a waist swivel, so we do get even more side to side. And because she's wearing the belt, it kind of does hide that seam rather nicely. Her legs do go forward on ratchets, they do go out, swivel at the upper thigh, a double bend at the knee, and then of course the Marvel Legends tried and true hinge forward and back and ankle pivot side to side. As for Star-Lord T'Challa, I am curious to see how the lanky proportions affect articulation, and what kind of tricks they've hidden here. I've already spotted a few. As for the head sculpt, there's a ball joint at the base of the head, and surprisingly another at the base of the neck. So if you move it forward and back, you can see a slight gap that starts to appear for a teeny amount of extra forward and back, swivel, and a ton of pivot side to side. The arms will go up to about there, forward and back on ratchets, swivel at the bicep, a double bend at the elbow, and the usual Marvel Legends hinge and swivel for the wrist. As for the torso, they've used a Power Rangers Lightning Collection style joint, so you get a ton of crunch going forward and back, and then all of the swivel is handled down here at the waist. The legs will go forward on soft ratchets to there, they will go out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, a double bend at the knee, and of course that very same hinge and pivot for the ankle. Moving on to Zombie Cap. This guy has the usual Captain America style articulation, but then again he has the asymmetrical zombie pieces, so they are slightly different in some areas. Starting off with the head sculpt, we have a ball joint at the base of the head, forward and back, swivel, and a ton of pivot side to side. The arms will go up to about there. They will of course go forward and back on ratchets, swivel at the bicep, a double bend at the elbow, and of course that hinge and swivel for the wrist. The torso does have a ball joint up above, which gets you forward and back, swivel and pivot side to side, plus down below we do have a waist cut, which is nicely hidden by the belt. The legs will go forward to there, they will go out to there, swivel at the thigh, a double bend at the knee. Down here at the boot, we once again have a swivel, but on the other side, for the bare flesh, we don't. So that's what I was saying when it comes to being slightly different. We do have hinge forward and back for the foot, and also some ankle pivot. Sticking with the zombie episode trend, here we have Zombie Hunter Spidey. I have taken off the cape just to highlight a little bit more of the range, and for something different, we've gone with the masked Spidey sculpt. As for forward and back, we do have that hinge joint, so we get a ton. We have a ball joint for swivel and a little teeny amount of pivot side to side. The arms will go up to there on ratchets, forward and back, once again on ratchets, a swivel at the bicep, a double bend at the elbow, which gets you way past 90, and of course the hinge and swivel for the wrist. This also has the Hasbro Power Rangers Lightning Collection style joint, so you get a ton of crunch forward and back, and down below for the waist swivel. The legs will go forward, once again on ratchets, and they will unfortunately only go out to about there. Swivel at the upper thigh, a double bend at the knee, which gives you a significant range, and of course hinge forward and back plus pivot for the ankle. Lastly, we have Doctor Strange. Now I hope that wasn't too much articulation in one go. I've tried to make the clips as short as possible. Now starting off with the head sculpt, we've got two ball joints, one at the base of the head and another at the base of the neck, going forward and back. You also have swivel and pivot side to side. The arms do go up on super sturdy ratchets to about there, forward and back, swivel at the bicep, a double bend at the elbow, plus of course that hinge and swivel for the wrist. The torso is on a ball joint, so you do get a crunch forward and back, and some swivel and a ton of pivot side to side. Now, depending on which leg you go for, this one is going to have slightly more range than this one for obvious reasons. You do have it going forward to there, going out to there. You do have a swivel at the upper thigh, a double bend at the knee, but unfortunately it is rather restricted because this piece hangs down rather low. We do have a swivel at the top of the boot, a hinge forward and back, and of course a pivot for the ankle. Now for a quick side-by-side comparison, here we have the entire wave plus the massive Watcher Builder figure in the background. He's so big that I'm tempted to display him hovering in the background, watching over my 1/6 scale What If display. Now I know, Keyboard Warrior, calm down. He's not the right scale, but in a forced perspective kind of way, in the background, high up on the shelf, it'll work. Trust me, that's how I'm going to have mine displayed. But he also works really nicely against the rest of the wave here. It's one of the most diverse waves in terms of new sculpt and character selection, and I'm super happy about that. I like getting a wave that has a ton of different characters in it, and they're all super unique. The paint applications are, on my wave, crisp and clean. I don't really have a ton of defects, and I do like the various different heights of all of the characters. There's a lot to look at on the shelf. The punchy, vibrant colors of some definitely do stand out. Specifically, Spidey, Nebula, and Captain Carter. Those right there are some shelf stealers. I am curious though, which ones so far are your personal favorites? Do let me know down in the comments below. Just before we move on, here we have Loki from the Loki series alongside Loki from the Loki series. I'm sorry, I had to do it. It's TVA Loki, it's Sylvie. They work perfectly together. Now there is a height difference, as you would expect. I'm just super glad that we actually got Sylvie. I didn't think we were going to because it requires an all-new sculpt. But they did, and they are making Mobius. I would also love to see classic Loki that comes along with an alligator/croaky, but who knows, only time will tell. Either way, as I said earlier on in the video, for me, I'm more than happy. This is all that I require from the Loki series, as long as I can get my hands on that Mobius. Just wrapping up on the Marvel Legends What If wave. Now, this is going to work a little bit differently to how I would normally wrap up a video. I'm not going to go through each individual figure because we have a lot. We'll literally be here all day. Plus, I've already told you what I think about them individually just a second ago. So overall, as a wave, this just works. The character selection is fantastic. This might be Hasbro's best line to date. Now, I'm not necessarily biased because I don't have a lot of love for What If. I'm not really enjoying the show as potentially most people are, so I didn't have this preconceived notion of, oh, they're going to be fantastic because I love the show going into this. Not the case whatsoever. In fact, I probably stand to be one of the most critical because down here in Australia, Marvel Legends are incredibly pricey. It's an average of $45 to $50 per figure. So these have to be fantastic for me to really like them, and some of them are. The one odd thing here though is Sylvie. She's the odd one out. She doesn't work in the What If wave. She should have absolutely be sold separately like Mobius, or sold as part of the Disney Plus wave. I'm not exactly sure why that didn't happen. I am still glad that we now have her, but in terms of the character selection here, she kind of doesn't work as well. I would have preferred to have a Bucky from What If, potentially, or even some other characters. There's a ton to choose from. I am glad that they did do pairs though. We have Zombie Hunter Spidey and Zombie Cap. We've got now Sylvie and Loki, we've got Nebula and Star-Lord, and while we don't have Hydra Stomper yet, it's still technically part of this wave, so we have Hydra Stomper and Peggy Carter. Doctor Strange, I'm perfectly happy with having separately, because he's kind of a standalone figure anyway on the shelf. Overall, there are some hits, there are some misses, but for the most part, I'm very happy with this collection. My favorites? Zombie Cap. Absolutely. He stands out. He's got a ton of unique sculpt, awesome paint applications, and a lot of presence. To go along with him, Spidey. I love the unique design of the suit. It's very MCU inspired, but slightly different at the same time. Plus, you have two head sculpts, the cape, and some interchangeable hands. And the outfit is very, very vibrant, so he'll stand out as well. And then coming in at number 3, I'm probably having to go with Captain Carter. It was a very difficult choice, but she is definitely in the top 3. I know I've toyed with some of the other ones being in there just because they have very strong elements, but overall, Captain Carter makes it to the top 3. Do let me know which ones are your favorites though down below. Now, if you are looking to pick up this entire wave, they are available from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is down in the description below. They do have 12-month installment plans and an awesome reward system. While you are down there, check out the link to 6 Scale Network, the awesome Facebook group. Come along, chat figures, share photos of your collection, and of course, see what's coming up next on the channel. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video. That's what I'll